Welcome, friends. I'm Black Flag Civilian, and I'm going to help you decide which accessories do, and even more importantly, do not belong on your AR-15. Today, we'll cover the 4 essentials every rifle needs. Then, a few optional enhancements depending on your build. And finally, we'll cover some creature comforts for personal preference. Then, I'll briefly touch on a less tangible X factor, rifle shootability. Then I'll show you a few different AR-15 builds that make sense, one that definitely does not make sense, and then wrap everything up with a conclusion. My intros are usually too long, so I'm going to skip the narrative and get right into the big 4 essential rifle accessories right now. Every rifle that you would ever use for defending your life needs 4 things: optic, magazines, sling, light. In that order. You literally can't safely aim your gun without an aiming system of some kind, so that's why optic is always first. Second is magazines, so you don't have to hand feed each and every round into the chamber. Third is sling, for multiple reasons. 1, it prevents your adversary from disarming you, and 2, it allows you to use your hands for other things while keeping the rifle ready at a moment's notice. The 4th essential is a weapon light, and this is one accessory that a lot of people think about wrong. More on that later. Out of the 4 AR-15 essential accessories, weapon light does come in 4th for a reason. Optic and magazines are higher priorities. But nonetheless, on any serious rifle, it's optic, mags, sling, light. Let's start by digging deeper into optic choice. Optics come in many shapes and sizes, and here I have a selection of lots of different ones that you might want to put on your AR-15. There's no best or worst option, just a series of trade-offs. And side note, there is one optic setup that I consider the closest thing to no compromises. I'll share that at the end. But remember that you'll have to think about your environment, your most likely civil defense circumstances, in order to make the best choices for your rifle. Let me speak briefly on each option. First, iron sights. I'm going to keep it real. Iron sights are obsolete. If you have a gun with built-in irons, that's one thing. But if you're accessorizing an AR-15, do not use iron sights as a primary aiming solution. As a secondary to a red dot, that's okay. Something you used to hear a lot: learn on irons first, and then learn red dots. In my opinion, that's FUD advice at this point. Red dots, the next item we're discussing, are superior in every way except for the fact that they have a battery life. But with modern options averaging 20 to 50,000 hours on a single battery, even this downside is almost irrelevant. Okay, red dots. This is going to be the best option for most of you. In simple terms, when you look through a red dot, it's like having a laser pointer on your target, except only you can see it. Red dots always use a true, or damn close to true, 1x magnification, designed to be used with both eyes open. That gives you unparalleled situational awareness compared to any magnified optic. You can see your target, your tiny personal laser on your target, and you still see all the information in your peripheral vision. These days, you can get a reliable and durable red dot sight for about $150 brand new. More like $100 if you're willing to wait for a big holiday sale or hit the used market. They are incredibly simple and intuitive to use. And bonus, these days, red dots usually come with a quality mount bundled right into the purchase. Now, I just spent a lot of time talking up red dots, but they aren't right for everyone. You have to decide based on your use case. But for most legitimate, civilian-involved shooting scenarios, your shots are going to be 100 yards and in. Not always, but usually. And that's where red dots excel. For all these reasons, the red dot is going to be a great option for many of you. Next up, the low power variable optic, or LPVO. This is an optic with a 1x aiming solution that also zooms up to most commonly 6x or 8x. This is the true jack of all trades, master of none optic style. These generally have an acceptable but not great 1x paired with an acceptable but not great top-end magnification. They have a fixed parallax, or in other words, they have no focus knob for dialing in clarity at different distances. This means that very close and very distant targets might be out of focus to your eye. You aren't intended to dial any elevation or windage, or make any other real-time adjustments aside from magnification. They are intended for making fast, accurate enough hits. 1x performance is sometimes wonky depending on the particular scope and the properties of your particular eyeball, but this 1x to 6x-ish magnification range allows a good shooter to make hits from point blank out to 400 or 500 yards. That's a massive range of capability. For this reason, it's a popular option for general purpose AR-15s. And thankfully for us lowly consumers, these LPVOs are getting better and cheaper every year. One thing to note, unlike the red dot, you generally need to purchase a separate mount for your LPVO. On your AR-15, you're going to want something called a cantilever mount. This kind of mount pushes your optic forward an inch or so, which puts it in a much more comfortable position for the shooter. Just make sure that you get a mount with the right scope diameter. Your next optic option is the mid-power variable optic, or MPVO. These scopes have a low end around 2x and a top end around 12x. These types of optics are for when you need a little more magnification than what is offered by the LPVO, and you're okay with sacrificing your 1x in order to get it. These are common on special purpose rifles, or SPRs, as they allow the shooter to make more accurate first round hits at distances up to 600 or 700 yards on the AR-15 platform. These scopes are unquestionably in vogue right now. A lot of people run them, but I do want to emphasize that they are significantly worse for placing shots inside of 100 yards compared to a red dot or even an LPVO set to 1x. MPVOs have no 1x, so both eyes open shooting is far less intuitive. And same as the LPVO, you're probably going to want a cantilever mount if you're attaching it to an AR-15. And in my opinion, the best way to run an MPVO is with a mount with the ability to run a red dot at 12 o'clock. That way, you have a nice 1x and night vision aiming solution while still getting that 12x or so upper end for long distance shots. That's massive capability at the cost of a chunkier, heavier, and slightly taller optic stack. My advice? Unless the purpose of your build is mid to long range precision, the MPVO is probably not the best optic for your general purpose AR-15. The next scope style that we're talking about is the high power variable optic, or the traditional rifle scope. The HPVO has a 3x or greater low end and a high end magnification of 15x or more. To be clear, that's just the base. Rifle scopes are made with much greater magnification ranges, but generally, those ones are not good options for your AR-15. The 3x to 6x low-end magnification gives you a very narrow field of view, which can make it difficult to find and lock onto your target, especially if the target is low contrast, camouflaged, or in a busy, complicated environment. In my view, these should only be used on AR-15 builds that emphasize long-range accuracy above all else. Something like a very long-range focused SPR, or even a semi-auto sniper system AR-10 build. And even then, the scope should probably be paired with a piggyback or offset red dot so that user does maintain a 1x aiming solution. The last type of optic I'll mention, and this one doesn't get enough love, is the prism scope. This is a fixed magnification scope, not variable. If you've heard of an ACOG or seen one in a video game, that's an example of a prism scope. These were very popular in the early 2000s. Probably because of their prolific use by the US military in its imperialist wars in the Middle East during that time. Usually, the fixed magnification is somewhere between 3x and 5x, but 1x prisms are increasingly common. Since there's no moving elements, these optics can be extremely durable and relatively small and light compared to LPVOs and MPVOs. This makes prisms a great option for a serious general-purpose rifle build. As far as downsides, prisms tend to have a very short eye relief. In other words, this is the distance you can position your eye behind the optic. Side note, these prism scopes often have an integrated red dot plate at 12 o'clock on the unit, so you'll see a lot of folks pairing these with a piggyback red dot for a flexible, dare I say, do-it-all optic stack. And this, the prism plus red dot optic stack, is actually my personal preference for a no-compromises general-purpose rifle aiming solution. I'll share an example of what this looks like in the builds that make sense section later in this video. And those are going to be your main options for an AR-15 optic. And with that, let's move on to priority number 2, magazines. AR-15 magazines come in many shapes, sizes, and materials. The main things to look out for are the number of rounds that the magazine holds and whether the magazine is made out of metal or polymer. The most common magazine size for tactical use is 30 round, by a long shot. But these 20 round mags are also common, especially for long-range precision AR-15 builds. 10 round mags are far less common for tactical stuff, but you will see them occasionally used by bench shooters at flat ranges. Some states restrict how many rounds you can hold in a magazine, so make sure to look up the magazine laws in your region so you don't accidentally become a felon. I use 30 round magazines almost exclusively in my kit. If I'm rocking my SPR, a longer range AR build, then I might keep a few 20 rounders with me too. They're better for shooting laying on the ground in the prone position. Now, I can't afford to shoot as much as some other folks. I'm still a small YouTube channel. But my experiences, plus collective wisdom of other shooters, leads me to say that these polymer P mags are extremely reliable in just about every AR-15 build, especially the Generation 3 P mags, compared to the older, now cheaper Generation 2 P mags. Lancer is another company that makes polymer mags, and your gun might like them just fine, but they don't have the same reputation for unrelenting reliability the way that Magpul P mags do. You can also go the metal mag route. One benefit is these metal mags are a little bit smaller than the polymer options, so you can sometimes fit more mags into the same amount of space. For example, 3 metal magazines fit into a spud pouch, while you can only fit 2 polymer P mags. And I actually had to modify a USGI 6 magazine bandolier, adding an extra row of snaps so I can fit these 30-round P mags in there, while the metal mags fit just perfect with the original snaps, without any modification needed. How many do you need? If you're just getting started, I'd recommend at least 4 magazines as a bare minimum, but the more the better. A typical modern military rifleman carries at least 7 magazines on their kit, plus 1 in their rifle. You probably aren't a military rifleman, but this gives you some context for the minimum number of mags you want to keep in the old ammo box. And pro tip, number all your magazines so you know if one of those magazines is routinely causing you issues in your rifle. Next up, slings. There's 2 common types of rifle slings out there, 1-point and 2-point. And unless you're shooting an MP5 from the hip, you're going to want a 2-point sling. And the 2 main features that I look for in 2-point slings are 1, comfort. It's got to have padding or some kind of soft webbing that I don't mind rubbing against my neck all day on a ruck. And 2, quick and easy adjustment capabilities. I like being able to loosen or tighten my sling depending on my current activity. It's also helpful to be able to quickly loosen up your sling in the winter time when you're constantly changing clothing layers throughout the day. And unless your rifle and stock have some kind of built-in slots for mounting a sling, you're going to want some kind of quick detach hardware for attaching that sling to your AR-15. Lots of companies make these: Magpul, Arasaka, BCM, and many more. For most of us, we're looking for ones that mount to M-LOK, since that's what most of us have on our handguards. You can also find cheaper, generic QDs from online retailers like Amazon, but whatever brand you pick, the one thing I look for is an anti-twist feature. These are QD attachment points that lock at a particular angle, preventing the sling from getting all twisted up. And now for our final essential, weapon light. I mentioned this at the top of the video, but weapon lights are something a lot of people misunderstand. Your weapon light isn't intended for extended use navigating in the dark. That would be bad light discipline. Think about it more as a quick burst of situational awareness or target identification. What does this look like? It looks like a short burst of white light, just long enough to take in your surroundings before moving to a different spot. Or a quick burst of light to ensure what your target is before you sling lead at it. And this isn't always nighttime. For example, you might use your light to peer into a dark closet, or to identify movement you saw in some shadowy brush beneath heavy tree cover. Obviously, there's a lot more to weapon lights tactics than what I just shared, but I wanted to demystify the concept of weapon lights a bit before getting into specifics, which we're going to do now. Weapon lights express their overall power in terms of lumens. The more lumens, the more powerful the light. But there's also a lesser known unit called candela. Candela is a measure of how far, distance-wise, the flashlights can throw those lumens. Generally speaking, a flashlight with a low candela rating leads toward a wide and floody light, and a flashlight with a high candela rating leads toward a narrower, more focused beam. Floody lights are good for situational awareness, but their range is extremely limited. On the other side of the spectrum, a narrow, high candela light lends itself better to medium and long-range engagements, at the expense of that close-up situational awareness. Now, realistically speaking, most weapon lights are somewhere on the spectrum between those two extremes. The reflector inside the light head will have a flood element and a throw element, though some lights favor one factor versus the other. Unfortunately, there's no cheap weapon light option that's reliable enough for me to recommend to you. The most affordable, decent option that you'll hear recommended everywhere is the Streamlight HLX. As of today, this weapon light costs a little under $150 on Amazon. The good thing is this includes mounting hardware and a tape switch. Personally, I prefer the Streamlight RM2. I prefer the form factor, and I really like this clicky button that's integrated onto the unit. But this costs about $40 more than the HLX. Beyond that, you're talking $250 or more for a Surefire, Arasaka, cloud defensive, or other Gucci weapon light system once you factor in the mount, tail cap, and tape switch. Watch the brass facts video that I'm showing on the screen here if you want to spend surefire dollars on weapon lights. And that covers the 4 things that should go on any and every serious AR-15. Next is optional enhancements. This is where a lot of people go overboard. These are useful accessories, but just because something exists doesn't mean it belongs on your rifle. I've said before that your mission should drive your gear. Well, on the same note, your AR-15 build's intended purpose should drive your accessory choices. For example, if you're assembling an AR-15 intended for speed at close range, your accessory choices should help you accomplish that. And on the other side of the spectrum, if you're assembling a long-range precision-focused AR-15, then your accessory choices will be very different, or at least they should be. Here are some of the things you might want to put on your rifle. First up is backup iron sights, the only acceptable use of iron sights post-2025, as a backup to your red dot or other optic. If your red dot runs out of battery, or your LPVO mount gets knocked wildly off zero, then you can remove the main optic and use these irons as backups. Some folks swear by these, and I agree that there is a lot of value to having a backup aiming solution. But even these affordable optics are getting extremely reliable these days. So I view these backup iron sights as more of a personal preference versus an essential item. Next up is a magnifier. Now I've said before that red dots thrive inside of 100 yards, and that's true. But if you want to extend that range with a red dot to around 300 yards, then you can add something called a clip-on magnifier to your AR-15 build. This accessory is exactly what it sounds like. It's a fixed magnification prism scope with no reticle of its own. Its job is to zoom into your red dot, usually 3x or 5x magnification, so you can make better hits at distance. That way, you don't have to sacrifice all the benefits of a red dot, but you can gain a little bit more range. And next, piggyback or offset red dots. We talked before about how intuitive and effective a good 1x aiming solution can be on a rifle. So some folks who choose an MPVO or an HPVO for their build will pair that bigger scope with a piggyback or offset red dot, a whole-ass second aiming solution to get that 1x capability back into the build. Now personally, I prefer piggyback dots over offset dots, because aiming at anything beyond 50 yards gets pretty wonky when you twist your rifle sideways and try to make hits. In my experience, keeping that dot center line with your barrel, in other words, directly above it, no angles leaning one direction or the other, it's a lot easier to stay accurate. And then we're talking bipods. Bipods are intended to help you, the shooter, get a solid, stable position for shooting your rifle, especially at long distances. It's mainly designed for shooting prone, laying down flat on the ground, but it can also help you get a nice position on top of a boulder, a fallen tree trunk, or any other kind of unusual concealment or cover. Bipods are essential for almost every long-range build, but they do not belong on close-range focused rifles and pistols. For example, a short 10.5-inch AR-15 pistol build with a red dot should almost never be paired with a bipod. This is a classic rookie move that will show others who don't really know what you're doing. Next, we're talking suppressors. Suppressors, or silencers, reduce the volume and the flash that comes from shooting your AR-15. Simply put, this makes it harder for your adversary to know where the heck you're shooting from. That's a big enhancement for your rifle, but unfortunately there's a lot of complicated legal and economic silliness related to buying a suppressor. Suppressors tend to be pricey by themselves, and this is made worse when you factor in the $200 tax that you must pay directly to the government. And even after paying the full price plus tax, you don't get to walk out of the store with your suppressor. You have to wait for the government to do a background check. In the past, this process took upwards of a year, sometimes more. This ridiculous expense and long wait time led a lot of civilians to avoid suppressors entirely. But at the time of filming this video, we're seeing record fast approvals, most of them inside of 2 weeks. So while the tax stamp is still a bummer, the process is at least faster than it's ever been. Next up, laser aiming modules. Laser aiming modules, or LAMs, are devices intended to use with night vision. Different units have different feature sets, but these units, at minimum, include an infrared laser which is invisible to the unaided eye, but highly visible under analog night vision. These LAMs often include an infrared illuminator, essentially an IR flashlight, paired with the IR laser to help the shooter identify targets at longer distances. Some of these units also include a visible laser to aid with zeroing the LAM, or a visible white light so you can just keep things simple and forego a separate weapon light entirely. Your needs will determine the style you go with, but the most important thing is this: get night vision first. If you don't have night vision, don't waste your money on an accessory specifically made for night vision. And the last optional enhancement that I'll touch on today is the thermal clip-on. These are generally quite expensive. Like at the bare bottom low end, we're talking $700 to $800. These allow you to add on-demand thermal capability to your rifle without changing anything else about it. I can't stress enough how massive a capability that is. And while these are very expensive units, using them in this way as a handheld most of the time and then clipped onto your rifle when needed, it's about as potent a use of thermal as you can get for a relatively low cost. AGM is something of the standard bearer for thermal optics, both with clip-ons and devoted thermal scopes. But more companies are offering cheaper options these days. I use this DNT Hydra. This one's the middle of the road option, and so far it's been good for me. The only issue I have is, I wish the thermal had a 1x base magnification instead of the 2x that it actually has. But for the price, the fact that I can use it as a handheld, as a clip-on, and as a standalone scope, I'm happy with it. And I want to be clear, this is some next level stuff. If you're still learning about the relative merits of red dot versus LPVO, then don't even think about this yet. And those are all the optional enhancements we're covering in this video. I'm sure I'm missing something important, but that should be a good primer on the more common stuff that you'll see. The last kind of accessories we're going to cover are creature comforts. These are items that don't dramatically change the function or overall use of your rifle. It's more that they affect the experience of shooting your rifle. How comfortable is it to shoot? Where and how do you hold the rifle? Less tangible soft factors that can make a big difference depending on how you like your AR-15 set up. This video is going a little long, so I'm going to be pretty brief with these. The first creature comfort is angled or vertical foregrips and hand stops. These are small, usually polymer accessories that act as an anchor or reference point for you to grab your AR-15 handguard. Some folks like these because it gives them a consistent grip location every time they lift up their rifle. These can also help you more intuitively tuck your rifle into the pocket of your shoulder. I used to use them pretty consistently in the past, but these days I go for more minimalist builds, so I've been leaving them off. Next is rail covers, grip panels, and wraps. Depending on the model, these might help you get a nice positive grip on your handguard. But more importantly, these accessories act as a heat buffer between you and your hot barrel. Anyone who's mag dumped more than 1 or 2 magazines in a row knows how hot a barrel and aluminum free-floating handguard can get. These help offset that, especially if you don't like shooting with gloves. Now we're going to discuss ambidextrous controls. Even if you have a regular AR-15 for right-handed shooters, you can add upgrades that turn your gun ambi. In other words, you can do important functions from either side of the gun. These clearly have a lot of benefits for left-handed shooters, but for me, I can reach AR-15 controls just fine. So I'd rather put my money into something that can actually improve my experience with the gun, like a trigger upgrade, or even the next thing I'm going to talk about, the charging handle. One item that I do always want to be ambi is my charging handle. Mil-spec charging handles are just fine, to be clear. Don't go buy ambi just because I like them. But when you actually get out there and shoot from unusual positions, off the sides of trees or other barriers, you'll find yourself charging your rifle however is most intuitive in that moment. So it's nice to have an item that is ambi. I like a durable aftermarket charging handle like the Radian Raptor, but that's just the one I have the most time on. Tons of other companies make good charging handles as well. And finally, muzzle device. I'll keep it simple. If you're shooting an AR-15 in 5.56 and you are not using a suppressor, use a flash hider. And don't get fancy. An A2 birdcage is less than $10, and any fancy flash hider is going to have massive diminishing returns above that price point. The only reason you'd maybe want to use a muzzle brake with a 5.56 gun is in a competition environment where preventing muzzle rise is of utmost importance. But that's an extremely specific use case. For most of you, A2 birdcage. And with that, we've covered just about every accessory and why you might or might not want to mount it to your AR-15 build. Next, I'm going to share a few words on overall rifle shootability, and then I'll show you a few of what I'll call builds that make sense before wrapping everything up in the conclusion. Finally, we're going to talk a little bit about shootability. And I don't just mean whether a rifle goes bang every time. A lot of people think that shootability is about adding more gadgets, but in reality it's often the opposite of that. Sometimes, taking off gadgets, reducing the weight of your rifle is what increases the overall shootability. And speaking of weight, this matters a lot. Too light and your gun is twitchy and recoils more than it should. Too heavy and you won't want to carry it through the woods all day. And just as important as overall weight is balance. If all your weight is in the front of the gun, it's going to be a bear to lift up and get on target. And finally, ergonomics. How well does the rifle fit you based on your accessory choices? Can you comfortably reach your weapon light, or do you need some kind of a tape switch? Does your gun heat up way too fast and you need some kind of a wrap around the handguard? Maybe you're using a prism sight and that eye relief is just too short for comfortable shooting. Shootability is the real test of whether your gear choices make sense. A Gucci rifle with all the most expensive accessories doesn't mean anything if you can't shoulder it and make a clean shot under stress. A simple rifle that balances right, fits you, and cycles smoothly will always outperform something that's overloaded with junk. So when you think shootability, think, can I aim fast? Can I shoot comfortably? If the answer is not yes, you need to rethink your setup. Here we have our first AR-15 build that makes sense. In full disclosure, this is actually an AR-22, a super safe AR-22 that you'll see in a future video. The heart of this build is the Holosun Ames Core Red Dot Optic. This optic has a massive window, it's super easy to get behind. I use Black Dog AR-22 magazines with this particular build, a Magpul sling, and finally, an SMS Laser HFXC 4-in-1 lamp. And that's basically it. This is a simple, effective build. Everything you need and nothing else. And for that reason, it's extremely light and a joy to shoot. Next up is a gun many of you have seen before, my Civil Defense SPR. And as you can tell, I did upgrade my scope to the Vector Continental 2-12 as promised. Now I have made a few changes to this rifle since I made the Civil Defense SPR video. As you can see, I replaced the HFXC with a small primary arms reflex sight. And this gun does lack a weapon light right now. I plan to put a Surefire Vampire or similar white and IR flashlight on here very soon. Now this build, it's highly accurate and it has a lot of those force multipliers, the bipod, the 2-12 scope, plus the piggyback red dot, but it still maintains a low weight, so it's still very shootable. This SPR build makes sense. Next up, and yes, you've been seeing this throughout the video, is my personal general purpose rifle build. Here, I have my preferred optic stack, the prism sight with a red dot on top. Now this mount here is actually kind of new to me. It has a big open center so the prism can see right through it. This allows me to use a 3x or a 5x prism paired with a full-size red dot. Relatively lightweight, but still highly durable. And up front, the Streamlight RM2, which you've seen already. A simple sling from Blue Force Gear, an A2 birdcage. Nothing crazy, just a lightweight, highly shootable rifle. Now next up, for this last one, let me show you a rifle that doesn't make sense. And here, we have an AR-22 build that makes absolutely no sense. First of all, we have a 9-inch barrel shooting .22 long rifle. There is no reason to have a 3-15 scope on a gun like that. And for the same reason, this should be a small, light, fast rifle. There's no reason to have a bipod. And as I've talked about all video, weapon light is very important too. Here we have the 4-in-1 lamb, but as you can see, position matters a lot. This one is blocking the scope. So there's another lesson for you. All your accessory choices need to work together as a system. Now obviously, this gun is a joke. I put it together for demonstration purposes. So let's take it apart now and pretend it never existed. All right, time to wrap up. At the end of the day, AR-15 accessories don't have to be complicated. You only need 4 things: optic, magazines, sling, and a light. That's it. Everything else, magnifiers, piggyback dots, bipods, angled foregrips, ambi controls, they're all optional enhancements or creature comforts. They can be useful, but they should only come after your rifle has all the essentials squared away. Too many people overload their guns with every new toy they see on YouTube or Instagram. That's how you end up with rifles that theoretically have a lot of capability, but suck to shoot. Your rifle should be reliable and purpose-driven. If it helps you put rounds on target quickly and accurately in the environment that you actually live in, then it belongs. If it doesn't, leave it off. So if you're just starting out, don't get lost in the weeds. Get your big 4 squared away and build from there only when you have a real need. I've said it before and I'll say it many more times, mission drives gear, not the other way around. And getting out and shooting your rifle just 1 more session per month will do you better than 24 straight hours of GunTube shooting advice. And with that last nugget of wisdom, that's it for today. If you'd like to support this channel, please follow the link in the video description to the Black Flag Civilian Subscribe Star page. Any level of support gets you into the BFC Discord server, where we have a mixture of casual community, gear talk, and also serious defense and preparedness education going on. In fact, in the description of this video, I'm also posting a link to a beginner gear guide created by members of the BFC Discord server. It discusses some of the accessories we covered in this video, but also much more. Thanks for sticking around. Until next time, take care of each other. The M81 drip. It drips more than the multicam, but...
It's French Central Europe. Respect my exotic camouflage.